But Australia won't be the only team we know that won't be making it to the World Cup.
Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me.
It's poor Italy. Poor mama.
You know what? You know what?
No,
You know what?
pizza di patto.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Secure the Bag OT. Today, I'm joined by Matt, and today we've got no Premier League football this weekend. We're not really sure what to do with ourselves, so we're going to complain about how terrible international football is. So we've both had heartbreak, haven't we, Matt, this weekend?
Yep.
It's been a rough time.
I'd rather not talk about my heartbreak.
We'll get there.
Happened this morning. I will touch on it lightly a bit later. And lightly, I say with a lot of expression, lightly. But we're here for the main show, and that's the heartbreak that we both shared 2 nights ago, or last night, was it?
Yeah, last night. So for anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about the Australia versus Japan game in which Australia threw away any chance of automatic qualification because we're bad. And now we're going to have to play, play through the qualifiers. So
we've made it hard for ourselves because now we have to play through the qualifiers, as Jackson said, and we'll most likely draw, I think it's the 3rd place team in the Asian conference, which looks like it's going to be UAE. And then if we beat them, we're going to play 5th in the South American conference, which looks like it's going to be either Chile or Peru. So there's a very slim chances of Australia qualifying for the World Cup this year.
We'll have a bigger chat about Australia's odds in the next few rounds that we've forced ourselves to go through. But let's start from the beginning. Let's start with the preview for this game, the build up to this game. I looked at the lineups, Matt. I looked at the lineups and said, I don't recognize half these players.
Yeah,
most of the regular names that I knew were not playing. Matt, what happened?
Well, look, so I looked at the squad as well, and I thought, no Tom Rogic. Okay, where's Aaron Moy? No Aaron Moy. Where's Jackson Irvine? No Jackson Irvine. Where's Riley McGree? No Riley McGree. And then further deep dive into it, so that Jackson Irvine and Aaron Moy out with COVID. Tom Rogic was actually not allowed to go up to international duty from the Celtic. They denied him going up to play for Australia. And then McGree was sustained an injury, so he was unable to play. As well as that, we had Harry Salter, who's been out extensively so far from December with an ACL injury. So there's been a couple of guys that have been out of this squad. And at first I looked at it and thought, wow, we are playing a lot of A-League players in our starting lineup, like quite a lot. I was like, this is going to be very interesting. I mean, like you got Ryan Grant, plays for Sydney FC on the right back. You've got left back Joel King. You've got quite a few A-League players. Those are just to mention a few. And then you've got some of the more experienced players like Matt Ryan, who, in my opinion, and I think Jackson can agree as well, was probably the man of the match for Australia for us, closely followed by Trent Sainsbury. Jackson?
Yeah, I'd agree. They were probably our 2 best players of the game. So, I mean, but it makes sense because there was a lot of players having their debut in this game. Stennis, if I'm saying it right, in particular. I think our midfield was really shown up by this inexperience that was Stennis and Metcalf.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, so our lineup, was Matt Ryan in goalkeeper. It was King and Grant at fullback position, Sainsbury and Jenick. I'm going to keep pronouncing it as that because I shouted it at him throughout the game. Then we had Metcalf and Stennis. And then we had, if I'm right, it was
Mobile on the left.
Mobile and
Boyle on the right. Yeah.
And then up front, we had Duke and Hurstig.
Yeah.
Now, the initial lineup said it was going to be a 4-2-3-1, but what it actually was a 4-4-2. Yeah, with Hurstig and Duke up front. It was very flat, like formation. We didn't really show any dynamic ability to move the ball around. Before we move on, I'll just say Japan's team. I know nothing about the Japanese national team. Minamino was there. We know him from Liverpool in the Premier League, but most of those other players I'm just not aware of. But they were playing a style of counter-attacking football. But even then, when they were in position, they had better possession than us. Matt, from the
Yeah.
moment this game started, we weren't happy.
It was from the jump, from the kickoff. I mean, you saw Australia poorly handling the ball. I mean, the weather conditions weren't the best. And Jackson even mentioned about how poor some of Australia's touches were during the game, during the opening about 10, 15 minutes. And he mentioned it could have been a factor of the weather. And I pointed out that Japan were in the same weather and were moving the ball a lot more swiftly and were playing the ball a lot more easily than Australia was. And I think it just shows some lack of experience from Australia, maybe some nerves as well. Yeah. This is a big game for them. But yeah, from the jump, I mean, lost passes, lost possession, wayward passes, touches, like first touches that are going a meter and a half away from you. Like they just weren't there. They were trying heaps of long balls at the start for some reason, and it just wasn't working out for them every single time. Yeah. It seemed they got the ball, and their final option was a long ball. That's really all they had, because they tried to play in the midfield. But like Jackson mentioned, that we had two debutants in the midfield, and that compared to Japan's team, which I also don't really know much about as well, but I'm assuming they've been together for quite a while, so they probably have a stronger connection than what our two debutants have. And yeah, from in that midfield position up until Jago actually come into the game in the second half, he come in for the second 45. Up until he come into the game, we were getting trampled over in the midfield, in my opinion. Like we didn't control the midfield at all. And that was evident with a lot of our lost possessions there and Japan's counter-attacking football from there. I mean, they got the ball from our mistakes in that middle third, and they were off. They were gone. Yeah. And Matt Ryan was pulling off some brilliant saves to stop goals. It could have easily been 5-0. Yeah. Could have easily been 5-0. 3-0 by halftime.
There were a lot of really good chances from Japan, and not a lot for us. I mean, we had a disallowed goal, but I just didn't think that was particularly. I don't think that was representative. I think that Japan had the better chances in both halves.
Definitely.
Right up until the 90th minute, and the minutes that happened then were crazy. But and one thing I want to mention about the first half, and something that happened, kept going in the second half even, but I'll focus on the first half for now, was we couldn't play through the midfield, and long balls up to the front were not working. The only alternative route of attack was down the wings. I mean, and we didn't play wingers, so it wasn't a great approach. It wasn't a great option to start with. But what we had is that when we had any momentum going forward, it involved Grant. Whether he was making a pass or whether overlapping, he was the man with Boyle. And Boyle didn't even have that much of a great game, but Grant just providing an extra man in attack was key. But down the left, nothing of the kind.
He was Grant was basically flanking or Dame down that right hand side. He was sort of doing what Trent sort of does for Liverpool as well. Like he was getting up in there and trying to create those opportunities. He does the same thing for Sydney FC. He gets up and he gets past, gets into that attacking line, tries to really, if he can't shoot, which he most of the time he tries to provide for people, he'll get down, he'll get through, he'll provide the other option. But yeah, Joel King, I mean, he was on our left flank on the left back, Jackson. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we saw him attack once. And I mean, fair enough, he was. It was said before the game that he was going to be solely defensive, just to try and stop Japanese attacks, the Japanese right winger from breaking past him. But I mean, the evidence was shown, especially in the second half. I'm sorry to jump to the second half, that we could only attack down the right-hand side. Like, it was only really meaningful attacks. And, I mean, we brought in, I think it was 69th minute, we brought in Fornaroli and we brought in Tilio, right? I think Tilio touched the ball about 3 times that game. First touch he did was a strong, good run. And then from there, it was not played through him at all. Midfield didn't even find him. Fair enough, he wasn't trying to actually move and create opportunities himself as well. But that's half the battle. The other half of the battle is your team trying to provide for you as well. And it's a bit of a contrast when you have Martin Boyle on one side and Ryan Grant, and you got Tilio with King on the other side.
And I'm trying to remember. So we started off with, here's the strange thing about the subs, because I mean, Jago was probably the best sub we brought on. And I think we both agree that Tilio just couldn't get into the game because I think part of it's his fault, and then part of it was the fault of the setup. Like, he just wasn't running in to get involved, and King was sitting too far back to get him involved with smart passes. But we had Duke and Heuristic on, two forwards. We were using them as flat out forwards in a 4-4-2. We brought on McLaren
in the 85th minute, I think it was.
For which
Martin Boyle.
So Boyle went off. So then we had three, because McLaren plays middle, like center.
Yeah, he's a center forward. Yeah.
So we started playing with three center forwards, and then we took off. I just become very confused about Fornaroli as well. Who'd Fornaroli come on for?
Fornaroli had come on for Duke, I believe it was, because I think by the 85th minute from that sub where I'm having a blank who'd come in the 85th, McLaren. When McLaren come on, I believe we had 2 10s, 2 8s, and 2 6s on the pitch.
The subs had no plan. There wasn't any overall plan. It was throw attacking players on, regardless of how the structure is,
and see what happens. Yeah, it's throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, basically.
And does it come as a surprise that when we did that, we lost the game 2-0? We threw all structure out of picture, just threw big men up front, and actually Japan had all the chances after that. We got nothing because we talked about the game was won and lost in the midfield. If there's no midfield and no attack coming from the edges of the pitch, what are the men up front going to do about it? That's not how they've developed as players. They don't have the characteristics to get involved. I mean, none of them are very good deep lying forwards, so none of them are going to get involved. They're all going to wait for a long ball, and then we had none of the ball, so we never got the ball up to them. Japan just won in the midfield.
Even when we did have the ball, it's not like we produced some quality passes as well. The passes were pretty subpar. Especially like
Grant had some good passes.
Grant had some good passes, but like other than that, if you're looking for players to provide, Grant had a few good passes, but other than that, you look at the rest of the team when they're trying to provide a pass, provide an option. Like a lot of them were either hit too far or too short, or just the weather was playing a factor into it. But either way, the passes weren't good, in my opinion, especially for those long balls. And you combine that with the fact of our lack of experience in the midfield, and your attack breaks down to one channel, which we were talking about, Ryan Grant. And once that breaks down, Japan knows where you're coming from. So it's very easy for them to stack to one side, or they know it's coming from there. So they know they only have to worry about one side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the goals weren't anything impressive. They were pretty sloppy on our end. I mean, it seemed like what we were very poor at was actually playing the onside. We had a tendency to play Japanese players onside a lot. And I know that was where the Japanese players, they hit it to the side. They hit it right of the goal post. We were all flat-footed. There was no Australian defender after it. The Japanese got to the ball first, cut it back in, goal.
Yeah.
Now, Sainsbury and Matt Ryan had incredible games, and both threw their bodies on the line multiple times and did so again for that goal. Both Sainsbury and Matt Ryan threw themselves hoping to block that shot. That first goal didn't happen.
It's
you
funny.
Don't win them all.
It's funny you say the right-hand side, that they're attacking on the right-hand side of the goal as well, because if you look at it from the perspective of you attacking from the right-hand side, it means Joel King's going to be the left-hand side defender on there. And, I mean, if they're trying to play an offside trap and they've played it poorly and they're onside, you put one-on-one with the keeper, because if you're playing onside, like an offside trap, and you push that line up really high, but one of your centre halves is playing back and plays that Japanese defender onside. Once that defender is gone, once he gets released on that ball, there's no defender in the world that's going to stop that attacker.
No.
There's no defender in the world that's going to turn flat-footed and probably stop it. Maybe Rudiger. Apparently, he's the fastest player in the Premier League. So
there's just no we just don't have the talent in the organization to keep the line together and keep players offside, prevent a player from lagging behind and playing the Japanese onside. That happened multiple times in the game, and it just wasn't good enough. So we were battered. It was the 87th minute, and it was still 0-0, and there was a hope, but then the Japanese they had the best chances. Everything after the 80th minute was them. And as a result, they won 2-0 and they were very ecstatic about it. We were very sad about it. So where does that leave Australia? Well, that leaves Australia 6 points off Japan in second with 1 game left to go, which means it's over. We're going to settle for third. We're far off from fourth, so third is the reality, which means we will now go through the process. Now, I think, as you said, it's hard to pick. We can't pick a man of the match because we've already said, Matt Ryan and Sainsbury were the 2 best individuals. I wouldn't want to give either. I'd just say both were incredible.
Yeah, that's it.
Worst man on the pitch for Australia, Matt.
Oh, you can't do me like this. You can't do me like this, man.
It's just one name.
I got two.
Well, you got to decide.
I don't want to do this to him, but Mabil's one of them.
He wasn't great. Yeah, he was poor.
Mabil's one of them, and I don't.
He doesn't even have Telio's excuse because he was playing much more. He was playing much, closer to our third than Telio was, but he was just terrible on the ball. So that's why he got subbed off. We were saying every time a sub was being prepared, we're like, this time it's Mabil. Mabil will go off now.
I'd say our other centre half, not Sainsbury. I'd say our other centre, Genek, for the amount of times he played Japanese players onside.
Yep, it was
because it was him who played a lot of them onside. He made some mistakes at the back of the pitch as well that created some opportunities that Matt Ryan had to pull out some good saves for. What about yourself, Jackson? Who do you think?
I won't dog on the debutants too much. I can't be cruel to people like.
Well, Metcalf played a good game to be a debutant.
Yeah, true. Stennis, not so much. But if I had to call out a player that just didn't, Telio, sorry. Look, the formation didn't suit him, but he didn't help himself at all.
Yeah, look,
it just seemed a bit lazy to me. And I've seen lazy wingers in my time as a West Ham fan. That's what a lazy winger looks like. And he's incredible on his feet. But that, for me, makes it even worse because the fact that he couldn't be bothered to track back and get himself involved in the play and just wasted that talent for the whole 30 minutes he was on.
So I knew you were going to say Tilio as well, which is why I was going to say if they played a different formation that was 4-4-2, they got him involved a little bit more, I think he would have impacted the game a lot more than what he had because he's obviously skillful, he's fast. He can play through contact, as we saw in that first run. Like I described to you the other night, he's basically an attacking version of N'Golo Kante, but he is just a few, and I emphasize that, a few levels below N'Golo Kante.
A few, yes.
I don't like a few, as in not like a few, like a few levels below him, but you know what I mean. Like he's got his similar build, similar style, like pace and play. It's just he's an attacking version that's not as good.
So that being said, we're coming rather close to time, and you'll see us in the future talking about Australia's odds in the next few qualifying rounds. As Matt said, the UAE, Chile, or Peru will be our matches. Now that's similar to our last one in 2018, where we had to go through the same process of playing Syria and then Honduras. Yeah, although I'd say Honduras was much easier than Peru or Chile, which is a nightmare fixture. We will probably not make it to this World Cup. But Australia won't be the only team that won't be making it to the World Cup.
Don't do this to me.
He's poor Italy. Poor mama.
You know what? Yeah. I still rep the boys.
You do. Well, they're shit. The boys are
the boys are not shit, mate. All right. Look, we have to give other teams a chance to win.
Of course.
We can't win everything right now.
Magnanimous in defeat.
Look, right now we're the best team in Europe for at least another 3 years.
No one said you guys were humble. Nobody said you guys were humble.
Hey, we're technically the best team in Europe for another 3 years. All right. So it doesn't matter if we don't make the World Cup or not. We're the best team in Europe.
You keep telling yourselves that while we watch, good teams in Qatar this year.
Yeah.
All right. With that said, yeah.
I was going to say, well, look, I mean, if Germany's there, fair. If France is there, fair. If England's there, I guess you can say fair. I mean, England and Italy have a little bit of a bitter rivalry at the moment after what happened at the end of that that Euros competition. So I know a lot of England supporters are cheering today about Italy's knockout of the World Cup, but we'll be back, boys.
Yeah. Another 4 years. Another 4 years. Well, you know, you
look
can
at
support Scotland in the meantime.
I'm going to have to. That's what I mean. Out of all of my heritage teams, 3 of my 4 heritage teams are gone. The only other heritage I have left in there is Scotland. So I got back Scotland. So
easy enough. Well, good luck to you on that one. And with that said, we will be wrapping up, people. You'll see us in future videos. And until then, see ya.
Cheers.